All right, so now that we have a few more tools to use, let's start taking a look at actually manipulating our footage. If I click on any clip and come up to the effect control panel, you'll see that I've got a couple of video effect defaults, and one of them is motion. Now in motion, I've got position, scale, rotation, anchor point. One here that you might at some point find yourself using is scale. If I come over and click on this, I can actually, you could do some kind of like tiled effect and stuff like that, depending on what you want to do. But that's one that you might want to make a note of. And also keep in mind too that everything is scalable here. So if I wanted to, at this point in my clip, say scale this way down, set a keyframe, come along a little bit further, um, and then have that come back up. Um, I've now got an effect where so you could manipulate that and you might find that useful. I'm just going to undo that and set everything back to normal. And let's take a look at color grading and adding some making our image look a little better. Right out of the camera, image tends to be a little flat. I'm going to come down again to our effects panel, and I'm going to click on video effects, and I'm going to go into the adjust folder here, and I'm going to grab one called levels, and I'm going to grab one called proc amp. I'm going to drag and drop both of those onto the clip I'm using, and you'll notice here that it pops up into my um, effects tab. All right, now levels, if I twirl this down, I've got a whole bunch of settings here that if we start messing around with them, you're probably going to make things worse than you can. And don't worry about playing around with the effects. If I do something on there and I don't like, I can always just highlight it and delete it, and then come here and add another one on. Okay, so you don't really have to worry. This isn't actually making a change to the footage. It's just think of it as applying something that is quite easily taken off. It doesn't actually affect your um, footage from the camera. So the better way to use levels is to come here and actually use this little setup tab, and you'll see the window pops up, and we've got something here that's called a histogram. Now for this image here, our histogram is fairly low because we've got kind of everything's quite gray. It's kind of low tone. We don't have a lot of contrasty image. Quite often you'll have, if you've got a lot of blacks and a lot of highlights, you'll have a histogram that's up and down here all over the place. Um, but this one we can use and we can make this image look a little better. So if I come down here, basically this end of the histogram represents our blacks, this and our highlights, and you can see that I've got an area right in here. Maybe I'll zoom in on that so that you can see that there are absolutely no blacks, and I've got a big area over here where there's absolutely no information in the highlights. So what I can do is something called crushing the blacks down. So I bring my cursor over just so I'm just inside where the blacks start. And with the highlights, I don't like to bring it all the way down here because I find it kind of blows the highlights out and it gets too bright. But what I do is I just bring it down just a little bit. This is where kind of the art of it comes in, and it's going to be you making a decision on what you like the final look to be. So if I click OK here, we can see that that just kind of makes the image pop a little bit more. I'll come over here and I'll turn it off and then turn it on. So you can see that that's just adding a little bit of punch in the dark areas especially. Um, Now our proc amp, if we twirl that down, we've got control over brightness, contrast, hue, and saturation. So, you might be doing a video where it's something that's quite serious, and you want to bring that saturation down, kind of like dull the colors out, something like that. I'll show you the difference, right? Or it might be something where you're doing a comedy or something that's lively, and you want to up the saturation a little bit. Um, with any of these effects, this be subtle with it. You don't want to go over the top with it and make it look too much. All right, so I'm going to leave that one set there. You guys can play around, brightness can brighten things up a little bit. And you can actually play sometimes with this one to bring the brightness up and then go back into levels and crush things down a little bit more. I'm not really liking what I just did there, so I'll undo that. But you guys can play around with that and get the look you want. Um, one other effect that you might want to look at, actually, there's a couple here that I'm going to show you. One is called a fast color corrector. If I drag and drop that on, this comes in really handy if you've accidentally not set your white balance properly. You can actually click on this little eyedropper and then click on something that's supposed to look white, and it will correct the white balance. It looks like these guys were pretty good. The other way, I can come in here with my color wheel and I can manipulate the color balance. Say I wanted to have this have a little bit of an orangey tint to it, then I can drag it over towards the orange here, and I can be aggressive with it or I can be subtle with it. That's one that you might want to play around with as far as just kind of manipulating the overall color tone. Be careful with this one though, because it can be quite difficult to match clip to clip. All right. So I'm actually going to just turn that one off and twirl it up. And then lastly, one that you might want to look at is the RGB curves. And I'll drag this on. I'll talk more about what the dynamic range of cameras is and what it means. But in general, you've got your 4 color channels and you can manipulate them here, right? So I can make things darker, I can make things brighter, and I can, take out a little bit of red, I can put in a little bit of red. I'm just going to reset this. Um, Generally, on shooting video, what we want to do is we want to add what's called a little bit of an S curve. Now, this is similar to what I'm doing with the levels, so I probably wouldn't do this on both, but you can play around with these and and kind of fine tune the colors that you want. But generally, you use either curves or levels. Not necessarily going to use them both together, but I'm showing you here because you might like one over the other. I find that levels for when you're just beginning is kind of the quick and easy one that gives your footage a little bit of punch. So now that we have these set, say I'm really happy with where I have this level. One thing that you can do is you can come in here and you can copy this effect, and I can then go to any one of these clips and come up and say uh, paste, and it will actually put that um, effect on that clip. So now that one is affected exactly the same as this one. The only thing I would caution with that is if you haven't filmed all of the clips with the exact same exposure, the same lighting, you likely have to go in and fine tune things. Like if I pull this one up, it's looking pretty good, but I could even maybe crush that black down a little bit more, right? So that I might come in, use copy and paste to kind of get the basics and then go into each clip and fine tune it. And that's pretty much it for an introduction to color grading and manipulating the footage. Two other real quick things that I wanted to show you guys is sometimes um, you can be moving panes around. Maybe you close something by accident and you want to get everything back to its default. The easiest way to do it is come up to Window, Workspace, Reset Current Workspace, and hit Yes. And that'll set it back to the default so that you kind of have everything back where it should be. And then the other one is sometimes if a sequence accidentally gets closed, or you might open it up and you don't have your sequence here, and resetting it might not bring the sequence back. What you can do is come down and actually just find your sequence in your project panel and double click it. All right, and then that'll bring it right back up and get it back up and running. Closing this sequence doesn't delete the sequence. It's still in my project panel here, so there's no reason to panic. If I double click on that, all of my edit is still there.